Well, hey everybody, good morning and welcome to Lake Oconee Church. I don't know about you and what your schedule or what your week has looked like. Earlier this week, I decided to go out for lunch and I went to the Lake Oconee Bistro down the road and I ordered the Mahi Rachel sandwich. And it just looked good on the menu as I was trying to figure out what to order, and it didn't disappoint. But isn't it funny how that something that sounds appetizing to one person doesn't sound appetizing at all to someone else? Like right now, that may sound like the worst sandwich in the world to you, but it was really good when I ate it. But we're going to talk a little bit this morning about our appetites and how we all have different ones and exactly what we do with those appetites. But before we get there, let me pause for a minute and just extend a special thank you to those of you who are our guests. I'm so glad that you came today, and I know how weird it can be to visit a church. It can be difficult to visit anywhere, but visiting a church can feel kind of awkward. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of the service. And as a way of just expressing that thanks, our guest service team has put together a gift I'd love for you to take with you when you leave today. And you can grab that from the studio, which is the glass room you passed on the way in. So after the service, swing by there, grab that quickly as you head out the door. But it's just a small way that we can say thank you for being with us this morning. And if you're our guest online, you can go to guests.lakeoconee.church, and we'll email you something special as well. Well, as we get into the next 65 minutes together, we're going to sing a couple of songs together that have encouraging words that remind us of who God is and what He's done in our world and in our lives, and how He desires for us to see Him and understand Him. So we're going to be led this morning by Krista and Amy and our band, and I'd love for you to join in as soon as you're comfortable. So if you would, stand to your feet, say hey to someone near you, maybe tell them what you ate for lunch this week, and we'll keep this thing going.
We just invite you to sing this with us. I won't let the storm weather my heart. Won't let the darkness beat me down. Sing in the night my hope alive in you. And I'll walk through the fire and not be burned. Pray in the fight and watch you turn. Jesus, today I give it all to you. Come on, sing it with me. No, I won't let the storm weather my heart. Won't let the darkness beat me down. Sing in the night my hope alive. I'll walk through the fire and not be burned. Pray in the fight and watch you turn. Jesus, today I give it all to you. Yeah. Give it all to you. You've overcome this world with love and made my fight your own. I lift my eyes, throw fear aside, and sing out into the night. Come on, 'cause even when the world cares, even when the fire comes, even when the war is waged, I take heart. 'Cause I know you are greater, forever your Savior. I will sing your praise with all that I have, with all that I am. I stare down your waves, 'cause you own the time. I still the soul and know. You wait for Sing in the night, my hope alive in you. Come on. And I'll walk through the fire and not be burned. Pray in the fight and watch it turn. Jesus, today I give it all to you. I give it all to you. You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. Didn't want heaven without us. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What can separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. You're beautiful. You're so wonderful. We love to sing to you, Jesus. Death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. You silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring, the praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. And you have no rival, and you have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom, and yours is the glory. Yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is. Nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. Yes, thank you so much for singing with us today. You may be seated now.
Aren't those powerful words that we're singing? Not only the story of Jesus, but also the reminder that life brings storms. It brings storms that seek to just weather our hearts and beat us down. And our effectiveness at navigating those storms is directly tied to the people we surround ourselves with. And I know that all of us, as we go through life, we're not exactly thinking, okay, there's a storm around this next corner. None of us want to prepare for that, and yet it is the reality, which is why we encourage everybody to be engaged in a small group, because you need a group of people that you can encourage when they're going through their storms, and you need a group of people that will encourage you in yours. And around here, Lake Oconee groups, they last about an hour and a half to 2 hours. They meet, most of them, once a week. They eat together. The folks pray together. They learn and grow together. And it becomes a group of people that does life together. They celebrate the happy moments. They cry together in the difficult ones and encourage each other. It's where care happens at our church. And here we open groups only a couple of times a year, and registration opened a couple of weeks ago on Sunday morning, and we invited you to jump in and to be a part of a group. And if you haven't yet taken that step, the good news is that registration continues through this morning. So right about noontime, we've got to cut that off because some of those groups are launching in this afternoon, kind of getting together for the very first time. And so you still have an opportunity to connect with a group. So I want to give you that chance, and it's really easy to do. You simply go to groups.lakeoconee.church, or you can grab your phone and shoot that QR code off the screen, and it will take you to the site where you can just indicate a couple of key interests, and that will help us as we connect you with a group that matches those interests and availabilities. It's a really, really simple thing to do. And the cool thing is, many of you are in a group, and many of you have done this over the last couple of weeks that aren't in a group, or your group landed, or you've never been in a group. So I just want to applaud your faith in stepping into that, because it is a faith step to join a group, because you don't know exactly who you're going to end up in a group alongside, but it's awesome to watch how God works as he connects you with people you didn't even know you needed to know as you go through life. And God has a way of growing our faith even in those moments. And for some of us, I know we say, I'm just crazy busy. I think I'm probably busier than most people. And pretty much everybody in the room is busy until we end up in those moments of complete isolation when everything is falling apart. And for others of us, we would say, well, I've got so much in my life, but my kids are what kind of consume me and keep me from joining a group, because I don't know what would happen with them. And we'll work with you on your childcare. We don't ever want childcare to be an obstacle to you connecting with a group. And for others of us, we say, well, I don't really need a group because I've got people. I know some people, and I hang out with some people, and I do some fun stuff with some people. And I would guess you do have people. But do you have people that encourage you forward in your spiritual journey? Because that's what you find as you connect with a small group. So kind of fight through some of those hesitations and take a faith step. See what God does in your life. Join a group that will inspire you to follow Jesus. And that phrase is our mission around here, to inspire people to follow Jesus. People that are in the room and online, and people that are in our neighborhoods and in our community. We want to inspire them to follow Jesus. And to those of you who give towards that mission on a consistent basis, thank you so much for practicing that discipline of faith. And whether you give using the buckets that are here in the room or whether you give online, thank you for your part in spreading the message of Jesus that we just sang about so powerfully a few moments ago. Well, around here, as we get to this point in our service, we generally have a message that challenges our hearts and our thinking, and it's drawn from the scriptures. It's drawn from the writings that have been put together that we know are the story of Jesus' life and so many others who have followed Jesus. And as we look towards those scriptures this morning, we're going to be led in that study by Andy Stanley, who is live on stage at North Point today. And he's going to take us through part 3 of that series that we are in now, entitled Your Integrity, Our World. And we're going to go there in just a moment. But before we do, let me pray for you. God, thank you that you do love us. Thank you that you sent Jesus to prove that love. And God, thank you that you allow us to be in proximity to each other, in community with each other, to demonstrate that love towards each other in the happy moments and the difficult moments of our lives. And God, today, as Andy speaks to us, God, I pray that we would see how our lives can more closely line up with what it means to be a Jesus follower. And God, I pray that we would also learn what to do with all those things in our lives that draw us away from that relationship. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
So here's where I would like to begin today, and I hope this isn't too uncomfortable. Do you know anyone, and no elbows and no stairs, sideways stairs, okay? Do you know anyone, worked with someone, maybe worked for someone who, looking back or, looking around, you feel like they were kind of ruled by an appetite? And we don't think of it in these terms, but you've met some people and you felt like as you watched their lives kind of unravel, you felt like you could almost predict their future. You felt like you could predict maybe their children's future. And as an outsider, just watching them try to manage through or navigate the complexity that they kind of created themselves, it was irrational from your perspective or from the outsider's perspective, but you're mature enough to know that this was just their reality. It was like a quest to quench an unquenchable thirst had basically just taken over their lives or took priority in their life over everything and everybody. And if you knew or know this person's story, it might even make sense, but they're chasing this thirst that can't ever be quenched was destroying or actually destroyed their life. Because appetites, as you know, are extremely powerful. They have the potential to determine and sometimes dismantle our lives. They have the potential to determine the direction and the quality of our lives, the direction and quality of the lives of the people closest to us. So when it comes to appetites, it's basically we either rule them or they rule us. You rule them or they rule you. And what's interesting about this and disturbing is that this is true regardless of what you believe, right? I don't have to tell you this. You can believe right and do wrong. And we're sort of out of sync with ourselves. I don't even believe in this, but look what I'm doing. And we get out of sync. And oftentimes at the center of that, the thing that throws us out of alignment, even with ourselves, is an appetite. That appetites have the potential to make us all hypocrites because we believe one thing and then we end up doing something else. And for all those reasons and more, our appetites pose a threat to our integrity. And that's what we're talking about today. Today we're in part 3 of our series, Your Integrity, Our World, Your Integrity, Our World. And we've said throughout this series that integrity is essentially the resolve or the courage to do the right thing, the noble thing, the virtuous thing, just because it's the right, noble, and virtuous thing to do, even when there's a price to pay, that you just do the right thing because it's the right thing, even if there's a cost on the other end. We celebrate integrity in other people. The person with the most integrity is often the hero of the novel, the hero of the movie, the hero of the story. We expect integrity in other people, we've talked about. We're quick to point out when other people don't do what they ought to do. But then sometimes we make excuses for ourselves when we don't do what we ought to do. So integrity or a lack of integrity, it kind of goes both ways. It makes hypocrites out of us. At the same time, we hold other people accountable. And integrity or a lack of integrity, as we said throughout the series, it is personal. It's my personal integrity or my personal breach of integrity. But while it's personal, it is not private. Because as we said in the first part of this series, the load or the consequence of a breach of integrity is always transferred to the people around us. It's personal, but it's never private. It's personal, but I'm generally not the only person that's affected when there's a breach of integrity. Your breach of integrity is going to impact some other persons. Thus, our title, Your Integrity, Our World. My integrity, my world. Your integrity, your family. My integrity, my family. Your integrity, your career. My integrity, my influence. So, here's our anchor verse. We talked about this last time, and I know this is going to be a little bit odd, even if you're watching from home or even if you're driving. I would love for everybody to sit up as straight as you can possibly sit, because this is part of the verse, I know. Some good posture, like your mama told you, but just for a moment, okay? Because this is the posture of the person of integrity. Remember what we said last time? The integrity of the upright. There we are. The integrity of the upright is what guides them. The integrity of the upright will guide them. People who maintain their integrity are guided by it. It becomes the decision-making filter. And so the integrity of the upright, that is the person that's taking the long look, that's thinking about later, that's not bent, that's not looking down at what's right in front of them, as we're going to talk a little bit about today. It's the integrity of the upright that guides them. The integrity becomes the decision-making filter. So in an effort to keep this memorable and portable and simple, I want to give you my definition, a little short definition for integrity that you can take home and that you can use and maybe write on your mirror somewhere or keep in front of you. Integrity, my short, simple version is simply this. It's just doing what you ought to, even if it costs you. It's just doing what you ought to, even if it costs you. Doing what you ought to, even if it costs you. Which, of course, brings us back to the question of why don't we just do what we ought to, right? I mean, we're adults. We've lived long enough to know, you just ought to do what you ought to do. And I want other people to do what they ought to do. So why don't I just do what I ought to do? We expect everybody else to do that. Which brings us back around to the topic of appetites. Our appetites, this is so important. Our appetites pose a constant threat to our integrity every single day. Our appetites pose a constant threat to our integrity, just probably every single day. And here's why I say that. Just about every day, you have to say no to one to protect or to satisfy the other. Every single day, just about, you have to say no to one, either your integrity or an appetite. You have to say no to one or the other, either to protect one or satisfy the other. You have to say no to an appetite in order to protect or preserve your integrity, or you have to say no to your integrity in order to satisfy an appetite. So there's a constant tension. It's every day, and it's at multiple levels. Now, when we think of appetites, we think about food, and we think about sex, right? Some of us do. Some of you do, right? I mean, those are kind of the two things that oftentimes come to mind. But there's lots of appetites. Here's just a list to kind of get us in the game. There's an appetite for acceptance, intimacy, inclusion, respect, recognition, fame, progress. That's a big deal for me, for some of you. To be envied, stuff, more stuff, new stuff, right? It just goes on and on and on, right? You got an appetite for all that stuff. Responsibility. Some of you just want more responsibility where you work. Achievement, winning, and there's more. There's all these drives, these appetites, these desires in us. And most of these are completely reasonable. But even the ones that are reasonable pose a threat to your integrity and pose a threat to my integrity. Now, before we dive deep into this, 3 quick comments just about appetites in general, because this is going to help as we move forward today. First of all, theists, people who believe in God, when it comes to appetites, we believe that God created them and sin distorted them. Number 2, everybody believes, theist or not, that appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. We talk about this all the time. Your appetites have a one-word vocabulary. You know what the word is? More. That's exactly right. A lot of you knew that, right? Your appetites just have one word. It's like more, which fuels our discontentment. We see people with more, and we all think, if I had that, if I lived there, if I drove that, if I knew that person, if I had that connection, if I'd started with that career, if I'd chosen their major, if I dated that, we think, well, then we would be content. But that's not true, because there are people in different parts of the world today who would look at your life or my life and go, wow, If I had what they had, lived where they lived, knew who they knew, and had that kind of job, I would be content for the rest of my life. In fact, there are people in different parts of the world that could look at your life 10 or 20 years ago where you were and would feel like, wow, if I had that, I would be content forever, right? Because appetites bait the comparison trap. And we all know there's no win in comparison, but it's very, very difficult to avoid the comparison trap. The last thing about appetites is this. Appetites always whisper now. They never whisper later, do they? All of our appetites, they never whisper, hey, let's just wait. Appetites are not a fan of delayed gratification, right? They tempt us to choose immediate over ultimate, now over later, which again is why our appetites pose a constant threat to our integrity, and they're not going away. For example, this is kind of personal for me. I have an appetite. Some of you have an appetite for achievement and advancement, right? I mean, this is a good thing. This motivates people to do great things and accomplish great things. But your integrity, my integrity, could become an obstacle to satisfy my appetite for achievement and advancement, right? Because when it comes to achievement, especially or advancement, you know, there's the short version and then there's the take the long way home version. And oftentimes the short version, the quicker version, causes us or forces us or tempts us to, to kind of dip into a little breach of integrity, right? Because doing the right thing won't necessarily get you where you want to get as fast as you want to get there. Doing the right thing may actually slow things down. The most direct route, especially sometimes professionally or academically, the most direct route isn't often the most ethical route. And when suddenly there's that tension, and we all have it, multiple levels, suddenly there's that tension between do the right thing and do the expedient thing, do the right thing and maintain my integrity, or, just take a shortcut, don't tell them the whole truth, don't fill out the whole form. Well, that's not exactly what happened. When there's that tension, we have a choice to make. And the choice is this. Will my integrity guide me? Or will my appetite guide me? I mean, we don't lie and deceive and cover up because we think it's the right and honorable thing to do. We lie and cheat sometimes and deceive and don't tell the whole truth and kind of, turn in half of it and, not answer the question directly. The reason we do those things is because it's a means to an end. It's a means to an end. It satisfies a desire. It, we think, quenches, or at least temporarily quenches, an appetite. So this is a tension we live with every single day. We're going to live with our entire lives. And here's the thing, and some of you know this. In every season of life, the tension is still there. It's just that the details change. The environment changes. The pressures change. But it's always there. There's always a tension. Am I going to satisfy an appetite and sacrifice my integrity? Or am I going to maintain my integrity and say no to an appetite? Now, there is a somewhat familiar story in the Old Testament that I think not only illustrates this in a really powerful way. The reason I wanted to share this story is because it gives us a word picture and a warning that I think all of us need to keep front and center as we navigate this tension in our lives and as we help our children and our grandchildren navigate this tension in their lives as well. This took place about 1800 BC. It involves two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother. Some of you, again, are very familiar with the story. The older brother was a hunter and a warrior and a doer. The younger brother was a thinker and a schemer and a really good cook. Okay, and they are known, we've introduced to them in the Old Testament as Esau and Jacob. If you grew up in church, you heard it the other way around. It was always Jacob and Esau. The reason it's Jacob and Esau, and when we hear the story, is because of the story I'm about to tell you, because Esau was the older brother, and consequently it should be Esau and Jacob, but we hear it said Jacob and Esau. These two boys were Abraham's grandsons. Now, as the older brother, Esau had some things that were going to come to him that were very unusual for us, but not so unusual in those days. He would inherit what they call a birthright. You may be familiar with this. Now, there's not really a modern equivalent in our culture. In fact, if anybody suggested this kind of thing, there would just be like, oh no, that's not fair, because it isn't fair, but this is just what they did. So as the older son, he'd get the birthright, and the birthright meant he had special privileges. He got double the inheritance of anybody else in the family, and these are families where your dad has multiple wives and multiple children, so the inheritance gets split up a lot, and you get double what anybody else gets. But maybe the best part about the birthright is you get judicial authority which means if there is a dispute in your family, if you're the older brother, you get to settle the dispute. To which some of you are thinking, we should bring that back, right? Because you have a lot better solution for your family dispute than everybody who thinks they get to weigh in equally in your family dispute, right? The other thing about the birthright is you got a special blessing from your father, which they equated to a special blessing from God. So that's kind of the setup for the story. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Their father Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau. He was his guy. But Rebekah, their mother, loved Jacob. This was part of the problem, right? Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew because he stayed with the tents and he was a good cook, Esau came in from the open country and he was famished. Literally, this little Hebrew word, famished. He was weary, he was faint, he was hangry. Do you ever talk about being hangry? It's like, I'm so hungry, I'm angry. I don't know if I'm more hungry than angry. Okay, he came in, he's just famished. He's at his end. His appetite is engaged. His defenses are down, and his senses are heightened by the aroma of his brother's stew. Basically, Esau is a sitting duck, right? And he said to Jacob, quick, quick, quick. That's the voice of the appetite, isn't it? Quick, now, immediately. Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. Now, this dynamic, if you are a younger brother, you understand that this dynamic rarely happens in the real world. In the real world, the younger brother rarely has any leverage over the stronger older brother, right? If you're a younger brother, you remember this, right? If you're the younger brother and all of a sudden there's a situation where you have leverage over your older brother, if you're a smart younger brother, you hit pause and you just kind of bask in that moment. Like, wow, my older brother needs me. My older brother is depending on me. And if you're a shrewd younger brother like Jacob was, you look for a way to leverage this because this doesn't come along very often. In our modern world, it sounds like this. So you don't want mom to know what time you came in last night. Is that right? You don't? Okay, let me think about that. What is it worth to you that mom never finds out how late you came in last night, right? And then, if you're a shrewd younger brother, do you know what you do? You start with the most valuable thing you can think of, and then you just kind of work your way down till you finally get something out of your older brother. But you just go for it. So, my older son, Andrew, has a younger brother, Garrett. They're 20 months apart, and we saw this constantly. In fact, when I read this story many, many years ago, once I had sons, because I don't have a brother, but the brother dynamic was a little foreign to me, but watching them as brothers, I just saw this over and over and over. And Garrett is a shrewd and smart younger brother. And I just saw this so many times. And Garrett would always begin with, okay, so can I drive your car? Andrew's like, Garrett, you're 14. No, you can't drive my car. It's like, all right, what else you got? So he would just start at the top and work his way down, right? I mean, that's what you do. So Jacob sees this opportunity, and he seizes this opportunity, and he's like, hey, go big or go home. So Jacob replies to his older brother, first, before I give you some stew. We got that? Yeah. First, he said, Jacob, give me some of that stew, I'm famous. And Jacob replied, first, sell me your birthright. Essentially, he's saying, let's do a trade. I'm going to give you a bowl of stew. I know, you should laugh. This could be like a comedy sketch, right? Or like, what? You give me a bowl of stew. I'm going to give you a bowl of stew, and all I want in return is your entire future. I want you to trade your future for a bowl of stew. Okay, seriously, who would do that? Who would trade their future for a bowl of stew? Who would trade their future for a lifetime supply of stew? Who would trade their integrity, their influence, their relationship with kids or future kids? Who would trade their reputation? Who would trade their financial security, their academic security, their potential for a bowl of stew? Well, nobody. Everybody. Nobody when I hear you talk about it within this context. But when it's sitting right there in front of me, when it's sitting, whatever it is, right there in front of you, everybody. We've seen it in some capacity, at some season of our life. We've done it. Story continues. Look, he says, look. I'm about to die. This is so important. Okay, you're not about, Esau, you just walked in here under your own power. You're not about to die. I'm about to die. You know what he's doing? He's doing what we do. He's building a case. I'm desperate. I got to have this, and I got to have this now. He's creating a narrative. He's justifying what he's about to do. You know what justifying is? It's just a lying. He's just a lying to himself. And then what he says in the text is so instructive. Because this is part of the narrative we build in our own minds. This is kind of the trail we follow. We, kind of bait ourselves down our own trail to destruction. He says, what good is the birthright to me? Like, pause, okay, a lot. What? But let me add 2 words to the text, okay? What good is the birthright to me right now? Well, it's of no good to you right now. But it's going to be a lot of good to you later. It's no good to you right now because it's no good to you until our Father dies. But that's later. The integrity of the upright will guide them. The integrity of the upright will guide them. The upright see right. The upright see right. Because the upright are focused on later. And later is longer. Esau was looking at now. I'm gonna die. And even Jacob, his brother's like, what? You're not gonna die? I mean, you're home. I mean, look at all these tents. Look at all this wealth. I mean, you had to wade through flocks of sheep even to get back to the tents. You're not gonna die. But in the moment, because he was bent, because he was not taking the long look, the short look, I'm gonna die. I'm not gonna take the later look. I'm looking at now. Now is now. And now is gone. Story continues. But Jacob said, swear to me first. Okay, I got you. I'm not gonna try to talk you out of this. I don't want you to die. Swear to me first. So he swore an oath to Jacob, trading or selling his birthright to Jacob, to Esau, to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread. He didn't even just stop with the stew. It's like, hey, how about some bread? How about some dessert? Hey, while you're here. He gave him some bread, some little stew. Esau ate and drank, and then he got up and he left. And the stew was gone, along with his future and along with his birthright. He traded his future for a bowl of stew. Who would do such a thing? What would cause somebody to do that? An appetite. Now here's how the narrative ends. And again, it's so instructive. It's almost like the author kind of got inside our minds and our hearts, even as modern people, and kind of extrapolated the games we play with ourselves in our own hearts and minds as we, again, just lie to ourselves. So Esau despised his birthright. Do you know what this means? This means Esau decided, that's not important. That's not important. I don't really care about that. That's not such a big deal. That wasn't such a big deal. I mean, I know everybody else thinks that's not such a big deal. He despised his birthright. I don't care. Do you know what we do? We've all done this. We decide we don't care when it's too late to care. Because that's how we justify what we have already done. I didn't really care about that. I know what my parents, I know what the church said, I read that, in the Bible, whatever. I know. But you know what? I'm not worried about that. I don't feel guilty about that. I don't have any shame over that. I don't care. That's not really all that important. And when we do that, we spend the rest of our lives, potentially, hopefully not, but potentially the rest of our lives, carrying a lie that we tell ourselves. We believe our own narrative. And the narrative goes, so what else could I have done? Okay, I realize now, looking back to the birthright thing, maybe that was a little bit overblown, but I was gonna die. I mean, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I was gonna lose my job. I know what you're saying, but she would have left me. I know what you're saying, but if I had done that, he would have dumped me and moved on, and then I've wasted 2.5 years in that relationship. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but you don't understand. You don't understand what was at stake. I mean, if I hadn't done it, they would have just laughed at me. If I had just done that, they would have never invited me back. So we hang on to our excuses, our weak little excuses, but we blow them up big enough to where it's a narrative we carry around the rest of our life, our justifications. And it's very difficult on the other side of trading your birthright, your future, for a bowl of stew. It's very difficult to look back and acknowledge the significance of what we did. And so most people never really face up to what they did. And consequently, they're never truly themselves. You cannot be yourself as long as you're lying to yourself. You will kind of live with a limp. And the people who are healthy around you, they'll notice. And if they're courageous and secure, they may try to point it out. And you won't be able to see it. You won't just be defensive. You genuinely won't be able to see it because you've buried it, because you decided, I didn't really care about that anyway, when it was too late to care. No, nobody can know you as long as you're lying to yourself. You can't give your entire self to someone else as long as you're lying to yourself. And if you read this whole story, Jacob's deception and Esau's, appetite set in motion a chain of events that would rip this family apart. Not just those two brothers, rip the entire family apart, break multiple hearts for decades. So here's what we have in common. Our appetites compete with our integrity. Every day to some level. Every once in a while it's big. And we will be forced to say no to one to satisfy or preserve the other. We will be forced to say no to an appetite to preserve our integrity, or say no to our integrity to satisfy an appetite. And equally concerning, or as concerning, our appetites in this way compete with and for our future. So we either rule them or they rule us. We either rule them or they have the potential to ruin us. We will all be tempted. We will all be tempted to trade our future for a bowl of stew. And in the exchange, what we received when we made the trade, just like with Esau, will eventually, sometimes quickly, be gone. Years ago, I spent many, many summers in Panama City or Daytona Beach teaching high school students, thousands of high school students. I absolutely loved it. I eventually got to the age where I thought, you know what, they feel like they're listening to their dad. So I handed that off to some other people. But I loved teaching high school students. And the reason was I would tell students, look, all the adults, they've made their decisions, they've made their mistakes, and they're living with it. You get to get it right the first time. That's what I would tell them. You get to get it right the first time, get it right, And one of the things I would tell them, then when my kids hit middle school and high school, I came back to this over and over. I said, look, let me tell you about your bad friends, your unhealthy friendships. They're going to be around for about 2 to 2.5 years, and then they're out of your life. Unhealthy relationships just do not last long, okay? Especially, middle school, high school, college, after. You let the unhealthy relationships develop, and you're part of the problem. I'm not saying those kids were a bad influence on you. Once you're in the relationship, it's mutual bad influence on each other, right? And those relationships will last about 2.5 years. Your healthy relationships can last a lifetime. The people you do life with, you go the distance with, those are healthy relationships. Those are people that are good for you and you're good for them. And then I would say this, and this applies to all of us, that when that relationship, that unhealthy relationship ends, whether it's a dating relationship or you live together or you just dated or it was a friendship or people you did sports with, whatever when that unhealthy relationship ends, there's nothing really to show for it except regret. And what you gave up by allowing that to consume your time and consume your life, what you gave up is like stew. It's irretrievable. It's not unforgivable, but it's irretrievable. Because you can't go back and unhurt people, and you can't go back and undisappoint people, and you can't go back and reclaim those years, and you can't go back and reclaim that GPA, and you can't go back and reclaim the opportunities that came and went because of who you were doing life with in that season. And this is the devastation, and this is the tragedy of trading our future for a bowl of stew. It's the tragedy of allowing an appetite, any appetite, even a good appetite, to cause us to trade later for now, to satisfy an appetite at the expense of our integrity. So here's the irritating question I want to camp out on for the next 6 minutes. Right now, not in the past, right now, what's your bowl of stew? Right now, what is competing for your integrity? What's competing for your preferred future? By preferred future, I mean, you've got a picture of what you want the relationship to be like, the marriage to look like, financially look like, relationship with your kids. You've got some sort of picture of, you have a preferred future. What is competing with? What's competing for? What has the potential to undermine your preferred future? Let me ask it this way. What or who is it difficult to say no to right now that you know you ought to say no to right now? What are you talking yourself into that the people who love you most and care for you most, if they knew about it, would try to talk you out of? Or what are you talking yourself into and they know you're talking yourself into it and they're trying to talk you out of it? What are you doing that's not exactly illegal, it's not exactly immoral, but you wouldn't want anybody to know? What is it? It's not exactly illegal, it's not exactly immoral, it's kind of immoral-ish, and you wouldn't want to have to explain it to the people closest to you? Here's what we all have in common with Esau. We don't know, and I'd say this all the time, we don't know what hangs in the balance. We think we do. I don't care about that, it's not a big deal. We don't know what hangs in the balance of whether or not we make that trade. And it's just not worth it. So, whatever influence I have, I just want to encourage you to sit up straight and stand up straight and take the long look and decide, just decide. I will not trade what I value most for something I have an appetite for right now. This isn't just about, I have a temptation. No, it's bigger than that. This is a trade. This is something you can't go back and undo or redo. This becomes a memory. This becomes part of your story. And unfortunately, if it's big enough, it's something that you'll carry and justify for the rest of your life. And there will always be something between you and the people you want to get close to. And after a while, you won't even know what it is. Would you just decide, I will not trade what I value most for something I have an appetite for right now? And would you just decide, as it relates to this thing that came to mind when I said, what's your bowl of stew? Would you just decide to do what you ought to do, even if it costs you? And you'll be glad you did. And the people who love you most will be glad you did. And the people you love the most will be glad you did as well. Don't trade your future for a bowl of stew. Don't trade your preferred future for something that's here now and gone now. It's just not worth it. Now, I don't usually choose the music. I get email about the music, but I don't choose the music. But I did choose this closing song. And as we do this closing song, and I'd ask that nobody leave if it's okay, unless you just have an emergency. During this song, when I put this statement up here, what's your bowl of stew, if something came to mind, and you know, in fact, you feel like the whole message has been like right to you, I want to ask you to do something that will cost you something. I'm going to ask you during this song, at all of our campuses all over the city, to leave your seat and to come to the front, and if you're able, to kneel and to tell God, I'm done. I am not making this trade anymore. I'm not going to trade any more of my future for something that's here now and is going to be gone later. Or I'm right in the middle of it. I'm done. And it's going to cost you to do that because the people you came with are going to have questions. So what? It is your future. It is your marriage. It is your children. It is your future. It's your relationship with God. So what? That's part of the problem. And if this is your first time with us, we don't normally do this, but every once in a while, it's the thing to do. And if you're here and you're like, Andy, I wish I'd heard this 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, 3 years ago, and you realize, you know what? You've been walking around with that secret. You've been walking around with that justification. Every time you start thinking about that thing 2 years ago or that season 4 years ago, you're like, oh, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That wasn't a big deal. Today you're like, you know what? It was a really big deal. It cost me something. Then I want you to come as well. And I want you, if you can, to get on your knees, and I want you to repent. Repent says, God, I'm owning this. I'm bringing it front and center, and I'm going to repent privately, and then I'm going to go back into the real world, and I'm going to confess appropriately. And I'm going to do what I can by your grace, God, to rebuild what can be rebuilt and to restore what can be restored. And this awkward few minutes for you may be the moment you look back on from this point on and say, you know what? That was the moment. I decided no more, no more, no more. It's not worth it. I'm through. The song says this: I've carried a burden for too long on my own. I was not created to bear this alone. It's a prayer. And Heavenly Father, I hear your invitation, because that's what today is. That's what the whole message is. God, I hear your invitation to let it all go. And I see it now. I finally see it now. I see it for what it really is, not what I've pretended it was. I see it now. And I'm laying it down, and I know that I need you, and I am not embarrassed for my friends and my family to know that. So I'm going to pray. I'm going to stand you up. We're going to sing. And I want to invite you to come. Heavenly Father, thank you for preserving this powerful story. Thank you for what it has meant in my life. Thank you for the moments when I realized that is a bowl of stew, and I'm through with the bowl of stew decisions. So Father, give us eyes to see, as we sang a few minutes ago. Give us ears to hear, and give us courage to respond. In Jesus' name, amen. Would you please stand? We'll sing.
As we continue this morning, I want to give you the same opportunity that Andy is giving the people in person at North Point today and at all of the campuses around Atlanta. So if you would, stand to your feet with me. The band's going to lead us. And if you want to talk with God, you can do that from anywhere. But there is something powerful about taking a moment and saying, God, I want to solidify this moment. So the front of the room is open. You can sit down in your seat where you're at, but don't let this moment pass. And if you need somebody to talk to, I'll be off to the side just if you want somebody to grab. And now I'm going to invite our band to come and lead us.
run to the Father again and again and again. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your son for redemption, the price for my heart. Oh, I don't have a context for that kind of love. I don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I'll run to the Father, I'll fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, again and again and again and again. My heart has been in your sights long before my first breath, running into life from death, and I feel this rush deep in my chest. Your mercy is calling out, just as I am. You pull me in, and I know I need you now. I'll run to the Father, I'll fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again. I'll run to the Father, I'll fall into grace. I'm done with my hiding, no reason to wait. My heart found a surgeon, my soul found a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, again and again and again and again.
Wow, it's been so much fun singing with y'all today. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you again next week.
I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. And yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yes, I will.
the fear of only being alone. It's the fear of never really being known.
Girl, you make me just a little bit braver.
Boy, you give me love always. We could be falling in love again. We could be falling in love again. We could be falling in love. We could be falling in love again. We could be falling in love again. We could be falling in love.
Oh,
We could be falling in love again. We could be falling in love again. We could be falling in love.
for all the years I will turn to you. You're still the one that I wanna come home to. You can forget what they say about turning gray, 'cause baby, they were wrong. You're more beautiful every day.
You're still the greatest man I'll ever know. You're still the only hand I ever wanna hold. You have my heart and you keep me safe. Yeah, baby, you're my man. I trust you a little more every day. Here we are falling in love again. Here we are falling in love again. Here we are falling in love. Here we are falling in love again. Here we are falling in love again. Here we are falling in love.
My girl is banging, she's solo maintenance. Don't need no champagne, poppin' entertainment. Take her to Wendy's, can't keep her off me. She wanna dip me like them fries in a Frosty. But every now and then when I get paid, I gotta spoil my baby with an upgrade. Hey, hey, hey. Yeah, we fancy like Applebee's on a date night. Got that Bourbon Street steak with the Oreo shake and some whipped cream on the top two. Two straws, one check, girl, I got you. Bougie like Natty in the styrofoam. Squeaking in the truck bed all the way home. Some Alabama jammer, she my Dixieland delight. That's how we do, fancy like. Fancy like. Fancy like. Fancy like. Don't need no Tesla to impress her. My girl is happy, rolling on a Vespa. Don't need no mansion to get romance. She's super fine, double wide, slow dancing. But every now and then when I get paid, I gotta spoil my baby with an upgrade. Hey, hey, hey. Yeah, we fancy like Applebee's on a date night. Got that Bourbon Street steak with the Oreo